Are you ready? This is the IssuesWatch podcast. Hello and welcome to the IssuesWatch podcast. I'm Brad Muniz, your host for the bi-weekly accounting and auditing episodes. I'm an assurance principal at Clifton Larson Allen. This episode qualifies for Nano CPE credit. If you're interested in earning CPE credit for this episode, hit the pause button now and head over to njcpa.org/nano to find out how. A quick disclaimer, the views and statements expressed herein are my own and not necessarily those of NJCPA or CLA. So, why did I say, are you ready? We're going to be talking about quality management standards. Now, you'll hear that the effective date for this is down the road. What I like to say, I'm not giving you the date till later on, because if I give you the date, you're going to turn it off. But it is down the road, so people start then hitting the snooze button over and over and over. But I know that the NJCPA has given a full day or a full session seminar on the quality management standards. I've been attending sessions on these for the past couple of years. This guidance came out a couple of years ago, and people are saying, I don't need to worry about it. Well, in reality, you do need to worry about it because you need to start ramping up and get ready for this. The AICPA put out an article recently. If you need to get a copy of the article, shoot me an email, I'll send you a copy. It's not a big article, but it talks about a little bit about getting ready for it and some of the risks you should be focusing on. And what's important here is that you need to start building a plan to get ready for this. So what happens, the AICPA said, okay, we have quality control standards, but we really don't control quality, we manage quality. Talk about the play on words, whatever you want to say. They came out with these new quality management standards. So for those that are in industry, again, don't shut this off and say, I don't need to hear about this, because this does affect those that are in public and the firms that are doing tests and other type of work. But you that are in industry should know what the firms are going through and what they may be asking you questions on or maybe pushing things to you. It's like when the non-attest standards came out. You know, those are in industry saying, why do I have to say that I'm taking responsibility for the preparation of financial statements? Why do I have to say I'm taking responsibility for the preparation of the tax return? Why? Because we in public have to be independent. And if you are not taking responsibility for those, then we are assuming management responsibility. That's a real big summary of non-attest standards. But the reason why I say that is just because this affects public, it can have the trickle effect. Much like Frank and I say all the time, what happens at PCOB or happens in other areas trickles down to private practice, nonprofit, etc. So they came out with the quality management standards, and they initially put it out. The NJCPA Accounting Auditing Interest Group, they actually issued a comment on it. A lot of organizations issued a comment on it, and they did make some changes when the standards finally came out. So what am I talking about? So the AICPA came out in the Statement of Quality Management Standards, SMQS number 1 and number 2. There's only 2, but they're big. The first one, a firm's system of quality management, is probably the most comprehensive of the, or more comprehensive of the 2 that you need to focus on. Because what it does is it takes your full breadth of all your activity in your organization and requires you to evaluate the risk within those different elements. So the one that I like to point on, or the couple I'll point on, is what tools do you use as part of your engagements? Do you use, I'll use a couple names, PPC, do you use McGladrey, and there's a bunch of others that are out there. Those are 2, I'm not advocating either one. But how have you evaluated those packages and the risks and make sure that they're adequate and supporting what you're doing? CPE even. Now, of course, New Jersey Society CPE, no problem, but you have the CPE that you're taking, how are you evaluating the courses you're taking, the providers, to ensure that they are quality? Everything else that goes in or potentially touch engagement, you have to evaluate and assess, okay? That's the most comprehensive, and you might be sitting there saying, this is not important. The international standards came out before AICPA standards, and this is kind of to get things to what they call the convergence of the standards, to put things in line. And international standards are effective before, so a lot of bigger firms are working on the international standards first and then going to let it fall into the ISCPA standards that we're going to have to adopt. But you should look into this and start getting things in line, because this is going to affect you. When you go through your peer review, if you haven't addressed this properly, it's going to be a real significant problem. The second one that came out was the engagement quality review. Now, when they came out with this one originally, engagement quality review, it said right in there flat out, you can't have anybody on the engagement involved in the engagement quality review. And that made it very difficult for the smaller firms. So they kind of loosened that up a little bit, but you should look into that, because some of the smaller firms do have a problem, not with quality management or quality. I know some firms that do unbelievable work. But what you have an issue with is the reviewing and the secondary type of review of the work that's being done. So again, look into these and start getting ready for this. I attended a session of firms talking about what they're doing to try and get ready for this, and I know it was 2 years ago that I attended the session, and there were medium-sized firms, not big firms, medium-sized firms that had already started the process of documenting. Now, I know we're all waiting for the third-party providers to come out with tools for us, but I would start talking with some other firms, reach out to some people that are some of the bigger firms and see what they're doing, see what they're willing to share. I know that we're focusing on the international standards, and then we're going to flow into the ISCPA standards, but start talking to people. Put something in Connect, see if anybody's doing anything with it, and if they're willing to share or have a discussion with you or share anything that they're pulled together. Some people are starting with Excel. Let's start with that, get that from them, see if it can work out. So what's required, though, is the design and implementation must be done by December 15, 2025. Now, I didn't give you that date before. It took me over 6 minutes to give you the date, because I know that you were going to shut off and you're saying 2025, I got a while to go. You do, but it's going to take you a while to ramp up. So you have to have the design and implementation done by December 15, 2025. And then you have to evaluate the systems within 1 year after. Okay, so you see this is the first time I've seen them do something like this, and it's really big. In line with the quality management standards that came out, SAS 147 came out, which is titled Quality Management and Engagement Conducted in Accordance with Generally Accepted Auditing Standards. That's all the title is. You're sitting here saying, okay, what does that mean? So what they did was they took the auditing standards and they're trying to conform it to make sure that all the references within the standards kind of marry up with the quality management standards that came out. Now, the quality control standards, System of Quality Control Standards, or SQUASH, are still out there. And what's going to happen with this, I'm not sure yet. I'm sure the ISCPA has put out comment on it. But 147 came out, and it's kind of marrying up the auditing standards with the quality management standards. And Frank and I have talked about 147. It's not a significant pronouncement that came out. It's not affecting theoretically your audits, but it really relates to the documentation. Again, when you start, and you don't only do your work as it relates to peer review, but if you aren't addressing this in the quality management area, in your audit area, and you're going to see I'm going to go on more, then you're going to probably have some deficiencies as it relates to that. SARS 26 came out. Now, SARS, member, is Statement on Standards of Accounting and Review Services, comps and reviews, that's what falls under there. 26, it's quality management for an engagement conducted in accordance with statements on standards for accounting and review services. So, similar to SAS 147, what they did was they said, okay, we're going to conform the accounting and review standards, and we're going to marry them up with the quality management standards also. So you see how everything is falling into place. Well, what did the ISCPA do? They said, I think we may have not missed one, but we haven't really come out with anything. So they came out with a proposed standard that they want comment on. The proposed standard is on the SSAEs, which is the Statement of Standards for Attestation Engagements. So agreed upon procedures, examinations, some reviews, and then not the reviews that fall into the SAR, separate reviews that fall into this bucket. Statement of Standards, Attestation Engagements. Don't forget about them. Now, I know a lot of people out there do them, so they understand that they're there, but some people do certain procedures and do certain work for clients and don't realize that what they're doing is actually an agreed upon procedure or an examination, but that would be a completely different report. But I've seen firms doing work for clients and issuing a letter, and in essence, if looks like, smells like, tastes like, and agreed upon procedures. I had a peer review once that they issued a letter or a report that when I got through it, I said, this sounds like an agreed upon procedure. And I talked to the ISCPA and they said, yeah, we think it is too. But it was really wrong. So unfortunately, the peer review had failed. So they came out with this SSAE proposed standard, and they want, this standard is to marry up the SSAEs with the quality management standards, similar to 147, similar to SARS 26, and you see the whole cascading effect of how it's gone through now. They're asking for comments by December 1st, 2023, and it would become effective December for engagements performed beginning on or after December 15th, 2025. You see how it's marrying right up with the quality management standards. Okay, so I guess some people are going to try and rush and get their engagements started before December 15, 2025 when that comes around. But keep that in mind if you're so inclined to comment on guidance when it comes out, not just this one, but others. I know the NJCPA, the ANA interest group, does comment on a bunch of them, bunch of guidance that comes out. I recommend if you have a strong passion about this to issue a comment on it. Okay. In closing, I want to share a few upcoming NJCPA accounting and auditing events. On October 17th, the Hudson chapter is holding a session in C Caucus on liability in compilation and review attest engagements. The Society's annual accounting and auditing conference is on October 18th. Frank and I are speaking. On October 23rd, there's an accounting and auditing attest update for practitioners with small business clients. You can attend this in person in Roseland or virtually. Get the details on these events and more at njcpa.org/events. And lastly, be sure to join the Society's Accounting and Auditing Standards Interest Group. Sign up for free at njcpa.org/groups. Thank you for watching or listening.